What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I am so super stoked to have you here again. We're going to get back into Lumafusion now, and we're going to actually start talking about color grading. Now, I did a short little overview of color grading back with the Lumafusion 101 series, but I really want to go like deep diving in, talking more about just the fundamentals and all of the thought processes and other things behind it. Plus, there have been some changes with Lumafusion 3.0, so I really want to kind of just nail those down now. And yeah, that's pretty much what I want to do. So let's just, without further ado, let's just jump into Lumafusion and let's start color grading. Okay, so this is a pretty old clip from Midsummer, I think. This might actually be from Lumafusion 101, to be honest with you. You can see it was shot in Canon C-Log, so it's a more flat profile, not a lot of saturation, not a lot of contrast going on here, because when you shoot like this, you see how you can see every detail in these shadows. This gives us the opportunity to really like get in there and put some changes in. So let's go ahead and go into our editing screen, and we're already on color and effects. Now, I could go ahead and drop this Canon Log 3, pull that blend back a little bit so we still have some of that shadow detail there, and really have a great starting point for this one from this. But here's why I'm not going to do that, and that is because of one of those changes I was talking about from 2.5. or 2.4. I really can't remember which one it is. From the previous version. In the last version, I could put an original on there. I could make some changes to it. And then duplicate that clip. Go back into the duplicate. Delete that original and add a new one. And then when I combine those, or when I would take that top clip and put it in the bottom one, when you get this yellow box around, it would combine the two clips into one, but it doesn't do that anymore. Now it just replaces the old clip with the new one. So we kind of lose that ability to stack layers worth of color grading, which is how I'm used to doing it. So if you go into like Final Cut or into Premiere Pro, you're gonna get the ability to stack your layers of color on top of each other, and that really helps you to get those finer details kind of worked out without actually breaking the image or causing color banding and things like that. We can't do that anymore in here, so all we can do is really just tweak the macro version, the overall image, and that means any fine-tuning, we're gonna have to go outside of Lumafusion into like Affinity Photo or to Lightroom or to Photoshop or something like that, and create a LUT to put back in. So instead of doing it starting with a LUT, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna do the reverse of it. We're going to use the original palette here, and we're gonna open up and we're gonna bring all of these details in the way we like it, and then we're gonna use a LUT to really fine-tune it. So before we do all of that, let me explain what each of these sliders are for. So your levels, this is several different sliders at once. Think about this as your exposure and your contrast. And these are all of your midtones. So in here, it actually breaks your midtones down into 3 as opposed to just being shadows, highlights, and midtones. Because this is going to be your overall shadow, and this will be your overall highlights, and then you can really tweak in the others here in the middle. This brightness just really, this is technically your exposure, but it doesn't work like exposure. So this brightness and contrast, I don't mess with those if I don't have to. Your saturation and vibrance, saturation is basically, it is your skin tone, and vibrance is all color except your skin tone. So you see how I just oversaturate, my face gets really well saturated, so does that light behind me. But if I come in here and do this, it saturates everything. So I do, if I pull the vibrance all the way up and then desaturate, pull down the saturation, you see how it is pulling it on my face, but not necessarily out of the light. Honestly, the highlight shadow radius, I have yet to find what this does. I have yet to see it be useful. There may be people who use it on a regular basis. It could be a great fine-tuning tool. I don't know how to use it. I don't know what it's for. I've tried. I will adjust it, but I don't really see a lot of changes. We'll take a look at it and see. You guys can tell me if you see something, but I don't see any changes when I use it. The highlight amount, that's just exactly what it sounds. This is your exposure and your highlights. This is your exposure and your shadows. So if you were to look this on Premiere Pro, this would be your whites and your blacks, really. Not really highlights and shadows, but that's the way they have it here. So we're going to stick with calling it that. And then your color sliders here. This is really your white balance. So in most editing softwares and Lightroom, Affinity Photo, Premiere Pro, anything else where you do any kind of color correction or color grading, you have one slider for white balance, which is great because it combines everything into one, so you just have to move that one slider until you get that perfect temperature you like. But I actually like the way they do it in Lumafusion a little bit better because it breaks down your red, green, and blue. And of course your red goes from red to teal, green to magenta, blue to yellow. And so you can really tweak those colors just slightly, and you can get a more stylized white balance than just saying 440 or 320 or 500, 5000. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. And then your gamma is how much light you're allowing through, so you can make an image darker this way, but it's really going to darken everything, not just darken one part. It's an overall image. And hue, it just takes it from green to green. And then tint, you can tint this to be any color you want. I only use that if I'm doing like a glitch effect, but for a photo, for a video, I almost never do it. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're gonna start here. I want to bring my exposure levels by putting your high all the way up and your low all the way low. You see how we've already created a good amount of contrast into our image. I actually like that. We're gonna tweak it just a little bit, I think, just because I want. You see, as you bring your midtones and your highlights and your shadows as far away from your midtones as possible, you create even more contrast. And if you move your highlight, your shadow will move. Your midtone is the only one that moves fairly independently, but not even. Because what you're controlling here is your distance from your midtone. So if I bring this all the way in, it's going to move both the highlight and the shadow, but the midtone, as you see, can slide a little bit closer to each, but they never get closer to one another. Okay, so there we have, still have some image in our shadows, but we have some definition on my face, and you can definitely start seeing where the lining of the hat is. This light is coming out a little bit more. What we're going to do now is we're going to pull this highlight amount down and pull our shadow amount down. Now this is pulling some light out of these, but not pulling any of the color or definition out. And now we just bring our vibrance up and our saturation down slightly. Or you can come up. I like a slightly desaturated face. And let's use our gamma to darken this down just a bit more. Okay, so now all we have to do is pull this image off. I can leave it like this. This is actually a good image. This is a great place to start, and then you can throw a LUT on and really just like fine tune that image in. But I want to cool this a little bit, and I want to show you how these sliders work. Before we get into that though, I want to explain the concept of color. So since the beginning of color television and color movies, there's really only been 3 colors that you've ever been able to see, which is red, green, and blue. And through little tweaks here and there of each of those colors, you're able to bring out other colors. By combining red and blue, you get purple, green and blue, green and red, magenta, blah, blah. You get the idea. Now, the theory is that all color exists on that same spectrum between red and blue, or between infrared and ultraviolet, to be honest with you. And in the middle of that is green, because that's where all the colors are combined into one. I know what you're going to say, yellow is its own separate color, but really if you think about it, yellow is a little more than desaturated and brightened up blue. It's closer to green than it is to its own separate color, to be honest with you. So that's why these are put on the spectrum of red to teal, green to magenta, and blue to yellow. So it's bringing the green, if you do the green all the way, you're bringing it closer to blue. If you do it all the way down, you're bringing it closer to red. So you really have to look at it as if these sliders are going up and down when you're talking about green, as opposed to left to right. And the same thing here. If you bring this up, you're going to be closer to green, so it's going to be yellow. And if you bring it down, you're going to be going straight towards blue, or violet. And red, green, same thing. So anything towards red, anything up, since red, it's really weird how our brain works this out. Anything closer to red we consider to be hotter. Anything closer to blue we consider to be cooler. I think it's just the way we've been kind of taught to believe. I don't know. Maybe it's because the desert is brownish red. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but for some reason we think red is warm and we think blue is cold, so that's how our brains see it. So anything more towards red, and you're going to be warming the image up. Anything towards blue, and you're going to be cooling it off. So I want to cool this image down, so I'm going to bring this down towards the magenta. Now know that you want to start with small tweaks. You don't want to come here and go all the way here, and then all the way here, and then all the way here, because you see that just makes a really blue image. You really want to start with these tiny little tweaks. And now, see, by bringing it here, you're cooling it a bit too much sometimes, so you can use that green to kind of balance back to the red. And then we bring our blue in. And then we make little adjustments here and there. Because what I'm really trying to do is bring this blue out a little bit, but keep this light as warm as possible. So I could bring this back here and come back this way. Actually, I'm not entirely unhappy with the way that looks. It's always going to be some type of a triangle. A little warmer, that's a little warmer. Or maybe just a straight line like that. I don't know. What do you guys think? I kind of like this. This looks pretty good to me. So let's go ahead and take a look at what LUTs we're going to throw on here. Okay, so there are a few LUTs that come standard inside. I like this, but not for a YouTube video. What we really want to do is kind of just, there you go, this color pop. I kind of like that one. We pull back on it a little bit. Yeah, now we can go in here and we can pull some of the saturation out, some of this vibrance back. And there we go. that was not actually a long time. It was 5 or 10 minutes, and we've got a really cool looking image. Now, if I wanted to go a little bit further on this, I would have to export this out, or I could export out just a snapshot of this, and I could put it into, like I said, Affinity Photo. I could throw it into really any other editing software I have, create a LUT out of that, and then import that LUT back into Lumafusion and tweak the look a little bit more. But I'm actually happy with the way this looks. I mean, I would like to take some of this redness out of my cheeks, but without having that layered ability, anything I do at this point is just going to be adjusting overall colors. We can't really do finite stuff, unfortunately, but you can get a good quality look just like this in just a couple of minutes. I definitely suggest playing with all of this. Oh, I said I was going to play with this highlight shadow radiance. Let's take a look at this and see. You guys tell me. Like, I put it in there. I guess I can see that it's kind of, if you look here in my face, around the eyes. Okay, it's almost like a sharpening. So now I know what that does. Yeah, it's kind of like a sharpening. Okay, so I like that. That gives a little more crispness to the image. Now you can add sharpness, by the way. You come in here, you can add a sharp times 1. And this is gonna, it just adds some grain to it. And this is especially helpful if you're using iPhone footage or any other camera phone, especially an older model that doesn't have a big enough sensor. Being able to add the sharpness in really helps you to make it look a little bit more professional, as opposed to looking like something you shot on your phone. And then if you when you have the box blur, which you can adjust. If you want to cheat into kind of blurring out the background a little more, again with an iPhone it'll help, but you just have to be careful because it's really blurring out the specific radius. So yeah. Now there is a way to fake motion blur, but I don't think it would work on here. I just think it would really mess up this image, and I don't want to do that. Plus, this background is pretty well blurred out. So yeah, I'm actually pretty happy with this, and we're going to leave it here. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful at all. If you would like me to create a LUT for you, let me know. I'd be happy to do that, or to walk you guys through creating a LUT in Affinity Photo. Just let me know if that's something you would enjoy. Affinity Photo is available on the Mac, and they have an iPad version. It's not available on the phone, so you wouldn't be able to use it on your iPhone. But if you're editing on an iPad, you absolutely can. It's about $50 more, but it's definitely worth it if you're going to use a lot of LUTs, especially now that we're going kind of backwards with the color grading and not being able to stack anymore. So being able to create a LUT is definitely worth thinking about. But if you don't have the $50, there are some free apps out there that do it. I believe Video LUT is either free or really low cost, and you can use that. It is a very steep learning curve, but I think it's a pretty good option for you for right now. Yeah, so that's all I got. So again, let me know in the comments if you'd like to learn how to make a LUT. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, keep editing, and God bless. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.